Before we dive into today's story, we just want to remind you that this is Beneath the Surface, the dark side of crime, where we uncover the most chilling true crime stories. If you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on the latest investigations and shocking revelations. We appreciate all of you for your continued support and for being part of this incredible community. Chapter 1. Bethany Ann Decker was born on May 13, 1989, in Fredericksburg, Virginia. From the moment she was born, she had a smile that could light up a room. Bethany was the kind of person who instantly made an impression on everyone she met. She had a natural charm that made people feel welcome and appreciated. Her family always described her as the heart of the family, someone who was always positive, supportive, and loving. Growing up, she excelled in school, effortlessly blending academic ambition with a passion for connecting with others. After high school, Bethany enrolled at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, where she pursued a degree in global and economic change. She dreamed of using her education to make a difference in the world, especially in global poverty and economic inequality. She was driven by the idea of creating positive change and helping others in need. Even as she balanced her academic life with a part-time job at an Italian restaurant, Bethany remained optimistic and full of energy. She was not only a brilliant student, but also a dedicated mother to her young son, Kai, who was born during her college years. Bethany's life seemed full of endless possibilities, and with her radiant smile and unbreakable optimism, it was easy to believe that her future was destined for greatness. Her family, especially her mother Kim, marveled at how Bethany could overcome any challenge with a smile on her face. They were proud of her and her achievements. But, as Bethany's story would soon reveal, no one could have anticipated the darkness that would ultimately overshadow her promising future. Chapter 2. Bethany's journey took another turn when she met Emiles Decker, a cadet in the Army National Guard. Emil was earnest, respectful, and deeply in love with Bethany. He admired her intelligence, drive, and independence. Their connection was immediate, and they soon began dating. Emil was the kind of person who remembered every little detail Bethany would mention, from her favorite childhood book to the name of the flower she admired on their first date. He loved her deeply, and she adored him in return. After a couple of years of dating, Emil proposed, and they excitedly planned their future together. However, soon after their engagement, Bethany found out she was pregnant. The news was unexpected, but it was also a welcome surprise. Despite the added pressure of impending parenthood, they both embraced the idea of becoming parents together. Their son, Kai, was born, and while the joy of new parenthood filled their lives, it also added layers of stress. With Emil leaving for training in the Army National Guard shortly after their son's birth, Bethany was left to juggle school, work, and motherhood on her own. Though she faced significant challenges, Bethany remained determined. She leaned on her family for support, especially her mother, Kim, who was always there to lend a helping hand. Emil's deployments to Afghanistan were particularly difficult for Bethany, but she kept a strong front, determined to provide for her son while keeping the household running smoothly. But, as the months passed, the emotional strain began to take its toll on Bethany. The bond she once shared with Emil began to feel stretched thin. Their communication weakened, and Bethany grew increasingly anxious about their future together. The dream she once had of building a life with Emil seemed distant, and she began to question if they had rushed into marriage too quickly. Chapter 3. As Emil's deployments continued, Bethany felt increasingly isolated. She began to notice the emotional distance growing between her and Emil, a distance that seemed to widen with each phone call that didn't quite feel the same as before. As she took on more responsibility at home, balancing the demands of raising a young child while continuing her studies, Bethany began to feel overwhelmed and disconnected from the man she had married. Bethany, once confident in her relationship, began to doubt whether their decision to marry had been the right one. She was emotionally drained from juggling the needs of her son and her academic workload. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Bethany confided in Emil about her concerns. She told him that she felt like they had rushed into things and that she needed some space to figure out what she truly wanted. Emil, though devastated by her words, understood and reluctantly agreed to give her the space she needed. During this time, Bethany moved into a new apartment, closer to her job. Though the physical distance from Emil allowed her to focus on her work and studies, it also created an emotional divide between them. As much as they both wanted to make things work, the strain of long distance and the pressures of everyday life began to erode their connection. Bethany was left feeling unsure about what she wanted for her future, and Emil's time in Afghanistan kept him away from home for months at a time. Chapter 4. It was during this emotional turmoil that Bethany met Ronald Roldan, a 31-year-old Bolivian immigrant who worked at the same restaurant as she did. Ronald, unlike Emil, was always present. He showed up at the apartment when Bethany needed a friend to talk to, offering comfort and companionship when Emil was miles away. He listened to her troubles and promised her everything she needed. Ronald at first seemed like a welcome distraction, someone to provide Bethany with the emotional support she was missing from Emil. But things soon took a darker turn. Ronald's behavior, initially charming, grew more controlling. He began to question Bethany about her every move, asking who she was with, where she was going, and why she was taking so long. He became obsessive and possessive, constantly texting her and demanding to know where she was and who she was with. Despite the mounting concerns of her friends and family, Bethany stayed with Ronald, choosing to ignore the warning signs that he was becoming dangerous. Her family, especially her mother Kim, grew increasingly worried as Ronald's behavior became more erratic. Kim had seen it all before. Men who put on a mask of charm to hide their true nature. She could see the manipulation and possessiveness in Ronald's eyes, and she feared for her daughter's safety. She knew that Ronald was controlling, and, worse yet, he had a history of violence. But despite Kim's warnings, Bethany chose to ignore them. Chapter 5. As time passed, Ronald's behavior became more erratic and violent. Bethany's family began to notice physical signs of abuse. Her son, Kai, was seen with a black eye, and Ronald claimed it was an accident, that Kai had fallen from a chair while a friend was watching him. But her family wasn't buying it. They suspected Ronald was harming her child, but Bethany refused to acknowledge the truth. Bethany's friends grew concerned for her safety. She had become a shell of the confident young woman they once knew. Ronald would follow her, making sure she didn't step out of line. He would sit outside her apartment, waiting for her to return, and check in with her constantly. Bethany was trapped, isolated in a controlling relationship with a man who showed no respect for her autonomy. Despite the mounting fears and red flags, Bethany stayed, convinced that she could fix things. Ronald's control extended to every aspect of Bethany's life. He would text and call her incessantly, demanding to know where she was and who she was with. He would even show up at places she told him she was not going. Bethany had grown used to this behavior, but it was beginning to take its toll. She was drained, both physically and emotionally. Yet, in the midst of it all, Bethany still tried to protect her son, Kai, from the chaos unfolding in their lives. Her mother, Kim, who had always been a constant source of support, began to work with Bethany on an exit plan. They knew that something had to be done before the situation escalated any further. But before they could make any progress, tragedy struck. Chapter 6. On January the 28th, 2011, Emil returned from his deployment on leave. The couple tried to reconnect during their time together, but the cracks in their relationship were impossible to ignore. Emil and Bethany had a heart-to-heart conversation, but Bethany confessed something she had been keeping from him. She was pregnant again, and Ronald was the father. Emil, though shocked, still loved Bethany and agreed to try to make things work. Despite everything that had happened, Emil believed they could find their way back to each other. On January 29, 2011, after a family visit with her grandmother, Bethany returned home to her apartment. But something was different. She was no longer the confident, optimistic young woman who had once aspired to make a difference in the world. The stress, guilt, and emotional turmoil were too much for her to handle. That night, she confided in her grandmother, telling her she was overwhelmed. She felt as though she was drowning in her own life. She spoke of her failed relationship with Ronald and how the situation with Emil was hanging by a thread. She mentioned how lonely she felt and how much she wished she could escape it all. The next day, February 2, 2011, Emil arrived at the airport for his flight, hoping to see Bethany one last time before he left. But she never showed up. Emil called her, but there was no answer. He tried calling her work, only to be told that she had not been there for several days. Chapter 7. Emil's worry quickly turned to fear as days passed without a word from Bethany. He contacted her family, and the search for Bethany began. When her mother Kim arrived at her apartment, she immediately knew something was wrong. The car was parked outside, but it wasn't in the usual spot. There was a flat tire and the car had an odd angle to it. Inside the apartment, there were no signs of struggle, but there was a sense of abandonment. Bethany's belongings were left behind, and there were no signs of forced entry. Her phone records revealed no activity since January 29th, the last day she was heard from. The search began, but weeks turned into months, and there was still no sign of Bethany. Her disappearance was as mysterious as it was heartbreaking. Her family and friends struggled to comprehend what had happened to her. Where could she have gone? Had she run away? Or had something far more sinister occurred? Chapter 8. The investigation into Bethany's disappearance intensified, but there were few clues to follow. Detectives searched Bethany's apartment and conducted interviews with everyone who might have information about her whereabouts. Emil, devastated, worked with the police to try to figure out where Bethany could be. He was cooperative with the investigation, though his mind raced with worry and fear. Detectives quickly began to focus their attention on Ronald Roldan, as he was the last person to see Bethany. He was questioned extensively, but his answers were inconsistent. Despite his lack of cooperation, Ronald remained a person of interest in the case. The detectives weren't ready to make any conclusions, but they felt that Ronald's actions were worth scrutinizing. They also looked into his past and found troubling reports of violent behavior. Chapter 9. In 2014, a significant breakthrough occurred. Ronald Roldan was arrested in North Carolina for the attempted murder of his new girlfriend, Vicky Willoughby. During the questioning, Vicky revealed that Ronald had told her he had made people disappear. This statement immediately brought Bethany's case back into the spotlight. As detectives began to piece together Ronald's involvement in both cases, they discovered that his story did not align with the evidence. Phone records, social media accounts, and security footage began to paint a troubling picture. Ronald was finally arrested in connection with Bethany's disappearance. Chapter 10. The legal proceedings dragged on, with numerous delays and legal maneuvers. But in 2021, Ronald Roldan finally pleaded guilty to second-degree murder for the death of Bethany Decker. In his confession, he revealed the chilling details of her death, an argument that spiraled out of control, leading to her tragic death. Ronald claimed he accidentally pushed her, causing her to hit her head on the windowsill, but experts doubted his story. His history of abuse and violence made his claim hard to believe. In February 2023, Ronald was sentenced to 12.5 years in prison. While this sentence provided some measure of closure, it was far from enough to make up for the years of uncertainty and pain Bethany's family had endured. The sentence also left Bethany's family with a painful reminder. Her remains were never found, and they were forced to live with the knowledge that they would never truly have closure. Chapter 11. Bethany's disappearance and tragic death left an indelible mark on her family, her friends, and the community. Her mother, Kim, became a staunch advocate for victims of domestic violence, hoping that her daughter's story would help others escape toxic and abusive relationships before it was too late. Though Bethany's family had achieved some measure of justice, they would forever be haunted by the loss of their daughter and the mystery surrounding her death. Her case also highlighted the dangers of emotional abuse, the risk of trusting the wrong person, and the need for greater awareness and intervention. Bethany Decker's story is one of deep loss, heartbreak, and, ultimately, a tragic reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. Her life, filled with such promise and potential, was cut short by the very man who once claimed to love her, and her family has been left to grapple with a loss that is impossible to measure. Her death was not just the result of a single event, but a culmination of years of psychological and emotional abuse, manipulation, and a tragic series of choices that ultimately led to the tragic night when Bethany's life was stolen from her. What makes her story so poignant is that it could have been prevented had the signs of manipulation and abuse been taken more seriously, had her cries for help been heard, and had Bethany herself been empowered to make the choice to escape a situation that was slowly strangling her freedom. While Bethany's remains may never be found, her legacy has not been lost. Her story has had a lasting impact on everyone who followed the case. Her family, particularly her mother, Kim, has made it their life's mission to ensure that Bethany's voice, even in death, continues to resonate. Kim has become a passionate advocate for victims of domestic violence, using her daughter's heartbreaking story to shine a light on the dangers of abusive relationships, ones that can be so subtle yet so dangerous. Bethany's case serves as a chilling reminder that abuse doesn't always show itself in physical bruises. It can be insidious, creeping into every corner of a relationship until it suffocates the spirit of the person who's trapped in it. For many victims, it's not just a matter of escaping. It's a matter of recognizing the signs early, seeking support, and learning that they don't have to suffer in silence. The emotional, psychological manipulation can be far more damaging than the physical wounds, and Bethany's story is a testament to the importance of addressing emotional and psychological abuse head-on, not just physical violence. In addition to the personal toll it took on Bethany's family, her case has been a significant moment for the broader community. It has brought attention to the ways in which domestic violence often goes unnoticed until it's too late. The fact that it took years for justice to be served in her case speaks to a systemic problem, one where victims often have to fight not only against their abusers, but against a justice system that, at times, seems ill-equipped to handle the complexities of such cases. Her story has sparked conversations about accountability and the need for more comprehensive support systems for victims of abuse. Advocacy groups, especially those focused on domestic violence, have used Bethany's case to push for better resources, education, and intervention strategies that could help prevent such tragedies from occurring in the first place. But it's not just the larger community that has been affected. Bethany's family will never be the same. No amount of justice, no matter how long it took, will ever bring back their daughter, their sister, their friend. The years spent in uncertainty, wondering whether she was alive, wondering where she had gone, wondering if they could have done more to help her, all of that is a weight that can never truly be lifted. Even though they found some measure of peace with Ronald's conviction, the grief of knowing that their loved one is gone, and that she died so tragically, will stay with them for the rest of their lives. Kim, however, continues to find strength in her daughter's memory. She has channeled her pain into advocacy, working with organizations that focus on preventing domestic violence and providing support for those affected by it. She knows that the fight for justice for Bethany didn't end with Ronald's conviction. It's a fight that will continue as long as there are victims out there who need a voice. Kim's courage in the face of such unimaginable loss has inspired many and has helped to turn Bethany's death into a cause that continues to save lives. Bethany's case also serves as an important lesson for those who may find themselves in toxic relationships. The warning signs of emotional and physical abuse can often be subtle, and those who are in relationships with controlling or manipulative partners may not always recognize the danger until it's too late. Bethany's story teaches us that it is never too late to reach out for help, to find a way out, and to make sure that the cycle of abuse is stopped before it spirals into something even worse. While justice has been served in Bethany's case, the aftermath will continue to affect those who loved her for the rest of their lives. The pain of her absence will never fully heal, and the knowledge that she was taken so violently, before she could truly live out her potential, will never fade. But Bethany's story also shows us the power of resilience. Despite the darkness that clouded her life in her final years, Bethany's spirit, her memory, and the lessons we can learn from her have outlasted the tragedy itself. Her legacy lives on through the work of her family and those who knew her best, who continue to spread awareness of domestic violence and support others who find themselves trapped in similar situations. In a sense, Bethany's story has become a beacon for change, a call to action for those who can make a difference in the fight against abuse and for a future where no other family has to endure. Thank you for watching today's episode of Beneath the Surface, the Dark Side of Crime. If you found Bethany's story impactful, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to always look beneath the surface. Sometimes, what seems like a perfect life hides a dangerous reality, and we can never forget that. The agony of losing a loved one to violence in silence,